My name is Peeter Mehisto. I'm a visiting research associate at the Institute of Education at University College London. And I've been working in the area of bilingual education and trilingual education for quite a few years. Bilingualism and trilingualism, in a sense, have been a natural part of my life. I was born in an Estonian-speaking community in Canada. I ended up going to school in English, much to my surprise. I didn't realize that school would be taking place in what for me was a foreign language. And eventually ended up studying several of my subjects through English, some of them through Estonian, and in evening school, and also eventually studying several subjects through French. Later on in life. So bilingualism and trilingualism have been a natural part of my life. But I've also worked on helping to set up immersion programs, and in particular a major bilingual, trilingual initiative in Estonia, which Fred, Genesee, has helped me with and helped my colleagues with. And in the last 3 years I've been working a great deal along with Cambridge and many other stakeholders in Kazakhstan.
My name is Fred Genesee. I'm a professor emeritus in the Department of Psychology at Mejía University. I've actually been there for quite some time, did my PhD there. And I stayed on, in fact, in Mejía and in Montreal because it's a bilingual community. And I come to bilingual education primarily as a researcher. I've done research on various aspects of bilingualism, in fact. Started off working in bilingual education in the school systems in Montreal, where they had a lot of French immersion programs for English-speaking students. And so I've done research on looking at the effectiveness of these programs, not only in Canada, but also in the US and in other countries. But I've always been fascinated by the role of language and language development in human development. So I've done research that examines different aspects of bilingualism. I've looked at children who grow up bilingually in the home, so they speak 2 languages as a native language, and have looked at second language acquisition in school contexts. I've looked at children who have typical patterns of language development, but also children with atypical patterns of development, so that we can better understand the capacity of all children for learning other languages. Most recently, my research has focused on children who are adopted and are learning a second language as a first language. My interest in this group is because there are very early examples of second language acquisition. And again, the motivation has been to examine children's ability to acquire language in comparison to monolingual children.
In Estonia, we were looking at trying to establish a bilingual program. As a legacy of its very complicated history, Estonia has Estonian medium schools and Russian medium schools. And we're looking to establish a bilingual program, a voluntary program in the Russian medium schools. But it was important for us to know what the research said. It was important for politicians and for Ministry of Education officials to know what the research said. And Fred played a very important role. He let us know what had been learned through these programs in countries such as Canada and the United States, and allowed people to make an informed decision, and help give politicians the confidence they needed, and government officials, be that national or local officials, the confidence they needed to know that bilingual education is a viable option. And as the years have gone by, we've ended up working on several other projects together.
Yes, as Peter said, our first collaboration was in Estonia, when Peter was really instrumental in setting up that program. And what I brought to that program, as Peter mentioned, was a knowledge of what research had shown about the effectiveness of immersion program in various settings. And I continue to work with Peter and enjoy it very much because he brings a different perspective to bilingual education, which I don't have or didn't have before working with them. The perspective that looks at the creation of bilingual programs and the development of these programs in a broader context, within the context of the community, within the context of the country in which they exist,
So in that sense, it's been very good to work with Fred on this particular project, because my key research interest, in a sense, has been navigating the management and pedagogical complexities of bilingual programs, and looking at the practical things that one needs to take into account, the practical factors, whether those be intangible forces such as a belief in the value of bilingual education, or really practical mechanisms that need to be in place. Fred also really understands the research very well. He also, I think, really understands many of these mechanisms very well, many of these forces very well.
Yeah, the bilingual programs are complicated, and they differ from one community to the other. And in working together with Peter and bilingual educators in general who work together, I think they bring a richness to what they do.
These programs always tend to spill over into politics, into stakeholder relations. It's simply not a mechanistic formula that one can follow. Yes, there are many key factors that one needs to take into account. One needs to have learning materials and teaching staff and good leadership. But there are also issues surrounding how one works with the community, the status of the language, etc. So it's also quite a complex issue. And I think that's what this book does. It explores many of these complexities. It provides lots of practical advice about things one needs to put into place that are quite tangible. And this is a kind of a shared knowledge that we know a great deal about. But then it also discusses some of these more intangible things that are very context dependent and that do need to be taken into account.